I'm really excited to see so many of you here tonight. My name is Becca Bass, and I've served on the Healthy Lakewood Foundation Board since 2018. It's been my privilege for the past 2 years to serve as board president. We're very excited and want to give a special thanks for all of our community partners here with us tonight. At Healthy Lakewood Foundation, we deeply value the relationships that we build with our grantees and our community organizations. We recognize and appreciate all the time and effort that they put into sharing with us and providing us with feedback as we learn with and from them. Your insights and collaboration are invaluable, and they guide the work of the Healthy Lakewood Foundation. I'd like to guide your attention to the back of the room. We've got an information table there with lots of handouts and flyers about our grantees from 2024 and 2025. There's also copies of our annual report with more information if you'd like to learn about the essential work that our organizations we support through grant making are doing here in Lakewood and beyond. Just a bit of housekeeping. We would like to ask everyone to please silence your cell phones so that we can be as present as possible while we're here tonight. If you need to get up at any time, whether to grab a drink of water, there's cookies on the back table, and restrooms are in the back north side of the building. We are going to be recording tonight's meeting, and it will be posted to our website as well as YouTube. Just wanted everyone to be aware. And then we're asking you to all please sign in on the sheets that are on the table. This is just a good way for us to know who was able to join us tonight. I think it's important to note, and a little bit of a moment of celebration, we had over 80 people register to join us here tonight, which is the largest RSVP we've ever had, especially for an in-person meeting. So thank you for taking the time to be here. We're going to kick off the evening with a short icebreaker. You may be sitting at a table full of people that you already know. You may be sitting with some new faces, and we'd like to take just a couple of minutes to get to know each other and who is here. So what we're asking is to please introduce yourself to those at your table. If you could share what your connection to Lakewood is, and then something that you're looking forward to. And so I'll kick us off. I'm still Becca. I'm still here tonight in my role as the Healthy Lakewood Foundation Board President, but my connection to Lakewood is really that this is our forever home. We lived a lot of other places over the years, and we were looking for a walkable, welcoming community like Lakewood, and when we found it, we knew this is where we were going to put down our roots for the rest of for our family. And then as far as something I'm looking forward to, I have to say every fall, my favorite day of the week is Friday. And that's because of the wonderful things here in Lakewood that my family does on Fridays. So you can typically find a couple of members of our family at Winterhurst at Open Skate. You can find my husband Dave will be on the football field coaching the Lakewood Rangers. Our son Luke will be marching in the band, and I'm going to be hanging out with my friends in the stands. So we love that Friday night, and it's really something to look forward to on a weekly basis. So with that, we'll turn it over to each of the tables. We just ask you to take a brief, 30 seconds to a minute, introduce yourself, and then we'll give you the heads up when we're going to reconvene here all together.
I designed the flip off the coin we started off with
Okay, I think we will reconvene so that we can dive right in. Last year, our community meeting focused on introduction of our equity framework. We welcomed April Walker from Philanthropy for the People as our guest speaker, and we really took some time to reflect on the first 6 years of the organization. We celebrated the launch of the Lakewood Community Resource Guide, and we had some robust table discussions about the evolving nonprofit landscape. This year, we're going to build on a similar model. We'd like to look ahead to share with you about our strategic planning process. We're welcoming Annette Iwamoto, who's the director of the Cuyahoga Health Services Chamber. And she's going to share with us some insights about the federal policy changes and those impacts on nonprofits. That will then lead into our table discussions about the essential role of nonprofits and how they advance community health and well-being. I'd like to take a moment to acknowledge some folks that are in the room, and I'd like to start with our Healthy Lakewood Foundation board members. And if you could all just please stand briefly for a moment. Yeah. This incredible group brings wonderful and diverse experience and expertise to our organization. They dedicate their time to the work of the foundation, and along with the community members at our tables, we'll be leading the discussions tonight. We're really eager to listen to what you have to share and to gain from your insight and your perspective. Kate and Sharon, our Healthy Lakewood Foundation staff, with Kate as an executive director and Sharon as our foundation and volunteer coordinator, it goes without saying that things like this don't happen by themselves, but they truly are the face of this organization. They are out all the time, meeting with grantees, meeting with community organizations, meeting with community members, the people that benefit from the grants that Healthy Lakewood Foundation is able to distribute. And we're just incredibly grateful for everything you do every day throughout the year on behalf of Lakewood and HLF. We've got some elected officials that are here with us tonight and community leaders as well. I'd like to just ask that you hold your applause till the end, but please do stand if you hear your name. State Representative Tristan Rader, Cuyahoga County Councilman Dale Miller, City Council President Sarah Keppel, City Council members Tom Bullock, Cindy Marks, Brian Evans, and Angelina Steiner, Lakewood City Schools Board President Nora Katzenberger, Lakewood City Schools Board members Colleen Clark-Sutton and Betsy Shaughnessy. And Mike Callahan. Thanks all. Thank you so much. I'm now going to turn it over to Kate, who's going to provide us with some organizational updates.
Thank you, Becca. It's great to be with you all tonight. And each year for this annual community meeting, it is a privilege to gather with you. As we have opportunities to meet with many partners and residents throughout the year, it is nonetheless exciting to assemble in one place and time together. This yearly update reflects our dedication to transparency and our role as stewards of community assets. We hold ourselves to a very high standard of accountability, which is why we make our annual reports, our tax filings, our community action plans, and grant information readily available on our website. And tonight I will share updates on 5 components of our work. First, I'll note our financial updates. As of August 31st, HLF's investment assets totaled over $28.8 million. In 2025, HLF implemented a 5% spending policy based on a 13-quarter average of its assets, which is an increase from our previous 4% policy. And this change enables us to expand our grant-making and community impact while maintaining long-term financial sustainability. Next, I'll share updates from our governance committee. HLF welcomed 2 new board members this year, Faith Noble and John Gromick, both bringing, yes, valuable expertise and fresh perspectives to our work, and we're grateful for their commitment to our mission. This year, we've also restructured our committees by combining several into a single strategic learning and evaluation task force, which will work more efficiently while maintaining its focus on grant making and understanding its impact. I'll now move to grant making, our favorite thing to talk about. Over the past 4 years, HLF has funded through 3 grant programs, and here are recent examples of funding in each. For community grants, Asia Services in Action, also known as Asia, directly serves Lakewood's immigrant and refugee families through wraparound support. Asia runs an affordable summer camp at Roosevelt Elementary for nearly 80 Lakewood children. And they also coordinate job placement for women with limited English proficiency and partner with Lakewood Alive to provide home repair assistance. House of Transcendent, also known as HOT, addresses health disparities among Lakewood's LGBTQIA2S+ residents by providing emergency assistance to prevent homelessness, hosting successful Halloween health fairs that expand access to cancer screening and STI testing, and offering comprehensive care coordination for housing, employment, and healthcare services. For our systems change grants, they include investments to the Lakewood Community Services Center for its emergency food discovery and learning study, which provided valuable data and community feedback for improving its food assistance strategies. This year also, HLF funded the LAND's first pilot community journalism program outside of the city of Cleveland, which has successfully trained 12 Lakewood residents and is recruiting its next cohort now to learn and produce solutions-based community journalism on issues that are specific to Lakewood. I encourage you to go to theland.org and pull down Lakewood and its communities tab, and you will find many, many great stories about our community with great reporting. And third, examples of our neighborhood opportunity grants include the Lakewood Public Library's partnership with Connecting for Kids, which supports programs at both Lakewood Library branches, including story times for children with special needs, playgroups, family activities, and parenting workshops. Additionally, funding for the Lakewood Black Caucus supports Black residents and offers community-wide programming, including an allyship program, cultural history events and celebrations, and a mutual aid program. HLF celebrates the dedicated work of our grantee partners whose efforts are essential in providing supportive programs that strengthen our community. To date, HLF has provided over $2.3 million in funding to 49 organizations that are each contributing to the Foundation's mission of enhancing health and well-being in our community. I will share a few updates on our strategic planning work. This year, HLF is developing its strategic plan for 2026 through 2029, and we're updating our grant making and our learning frameworks in response to feedback from grantees, which was gathered through interviews and surveys. Many of you participated in them, and we're really grateful for the contribution that you offered. Our grant making refresh will have a more significant impact on HLF's internal processes rather than on the grantee side, and we will be sharing updates on our grant making in the first quarter of 2026. On to community engagement, another favorite topic. HLF prioritizes community engagement through active participation in community events, soliciting feedback from grantees and partners, and through ongoing meetings with residents and community leaders. This year, HLF is actively engaged in 3 collaborative efforts. First, the city's Community Health Action Team, which is implementing the 2022 Community Health Needs Assessment Action Plan. The newly formed Lakewood Human Services Network that brings together local nonprofits for coordination and resource sharing, and the Greater Cleveland Funders Collaborative, which supports regional philanthropic collaboration. And these efforts enhance our understanding of both community needs and the challenges faced by local human services organizations. Now to the resource guide. Building on the success of the initial community resource guide, we worked with Case Western Reserve University students and community partners to create an enhanced second version, which is incorporating extensive community feedback and research, and there are copies in the back. With over 300 printed copies and countless postcards distributed and ongoing requests from nonprofits and city departments, the guide remains widely used and is available electronically on HLF's website. And we please ask you to see the QR code on your table postcards. To access it, please share the information widely and make sure that if you can, link to it in your, through your community websites as well. It's a great resource. So I've shared a range of updates, and I hope that it's apparent that HLF takes a measured and thoughtful approach in determining and planning our work to support the community. Through strategic investments, expanded partnerships, and community-focused planning, HLF is building the foundation for even greater impact in the years ahead. I'd now like to ask Ian Andrews to come on up to the podium. Ian has served as the Executive Director for Lakewood Alive for 14 years and recently completed the Mandel Foundation's Community Development Corporation Leadership Program. Ian and his mighty team of 8 staff members, along with their 28-member board, strengthen Lakewood through home assistance programs, small business support, and community events. Lakewood Alive is a member of the Cuyahoga County Human Services Chamber, and Ian will formally introduce our speaker, Annette Iwamoto, who is the director of the chamber. Ian.
Good evening, everyone. Kate, thank you very much. When Kate asked me to do this, I was honored, and I still am, and it just really meant a lot. The relationship that we've developed between Lakewood Alive as Lakewood's Community Development Corporation and the way that this organization has evolved over the years. When I was brought on back in 2011, and the things we've done together have been incredible, and the partnership with HLF has just reinforced how important this foundation is and the work that we do and all of us do together. So I could go on and on about that all day, but that's not my role here. I'm supposed to introduce our guest speaker here. So I would ask you, all refer to Annette's bio on the agenda at your table. Annette Iwamoto is the director of the newly formed Cuyahoga Human Services Chamber, bringing extensive experience in nonprofit leadership, community development, strategic planning from her roles at 1 South Euclid and Providence House. And I do have to quickly say, there are community development corporations in the city of Cleveland in all the neighborhoods. That's my background working at the Detroit Shoreway. Annette worked at 1 South Euclid, the CDC in South Euclid. There is a growing cadre of CDCs. We're the one on the west side, but 4 of our friends on the east side. So we are starting to show up to help fill the gaps in the entering communities, and Annette was doing that. So I just want to put that plug in there, that there's a really critical role these nonprofits can play in these entering communities. Her background in social administration, government relations, and direct services to families and communities positions her uniquely to understand and address the complex challenges facing human service organizations today. Oh boy. I've known Annette for several years now and could not be happier for her, selfishly for all of us, and for our community. As she leads in this new role, she's championing the really hard things so many of us see every single day. She's advocating to the powers that be about the gaps in services that we see every single day. And she's communicating a tremendous amount of critical and complex information to the membership during a time when organizations like all of ours, already working on limited budgets and dealing with client challenges most couldn't even comprehend of, are facing massive roadblocks at a time, and at times, outright disdain from some in Washington. I have found Annette's leadership to be so genuine, compassionate, communicative, and comforting. In a short amount of time, Annette has done terrific work, and I hope in any way that I can to be as helpful to her as she has been to all of us. Friends, please help me welcome Annette Iwamoto.
Thank you to Kate and the Healthy Lakewood Foundation for having me here today, and thank you, Ian, for introducing me. Just a moment before, I was getting to hear about just some of the work Ian did in the last week or so, and it really was a great reminder to me of why I serve as an advocate for the nonprofit sector 24/7. Nonprofits do such incredible work in such trying times, and I'm just so excited to be here today. I'm going to start just sharing a little bit about the Chamber. The Cuyahoga Human Services Chamber was formed nearly a year ago with knowledge that the human services system in our community is fragile. There have been increased demands for services alongside unpredictable funding streams. The COVID-19 pandemic had increased the pressure on our nonprofit organizations, and there was a great desire in our community for an entity like the Human Services Chamber, built by and for nonprofits, to build a stronger human services ecosystem. The work would fall into 3 buckets, the first being collective advocacy, serving as that collective voice for human services in our region, elevating the needs of our sector to elected and public officials and members of philanthropy. Network development would be creating events and trainings responsive to the needs of our members and providing opportunities to meet and build relationships with each other to strengthen our nonprofit community. And as we continue to grow, we expect to see shared services, finding opportunities to create efficiencies and build capacity for our member organizations, to reduce costs and allow us to focus more energy into advancing our missions. In the last few months, we've grown to over 100 members, 100 nonprofit members that provide some sort of support or service to people, communities in Cuyahoga County. It represents over 8,000 employees in our communities and $750 million from nonprofits, money that's invested into staff, resources, and services that provide essential supports in our community. Our members represent organizations of all sizes, from the largest social service agencies in our community to those that are all volunteer-run and led. They represent the wide variety of services provided to everyone. When I started in December, I thought I would be spending this year tackling building a new entity from the ground up. And so with the feasibility study and business plan in hand, we began to grow. Then on January 20th, we experienced a change in presidential administrations, and the landscapes for nonprofits across the country changed. It became clear very quickly that we would need to build a plane we were flying. The increased demands for services and unpredictable funding streams already stressing nonprofits coming out of the pandemic were now amplified by an uncertain economy and a volatile political climate that at best looks to undermine the resources available for nonprofits to do their work, and at worst is attacking the value our sector brings to the community. I'm going to be spending a few moments here detailing what nonprofits have experienced since January. This slide is already outdated. There have been more than 200 executive orders signed since January 20th, many with direct or indirect consequences for nonprofits, making it very clear that the Trump administration does not want nonprofits working in areas of diversity, equity, and inclusion, immigration, supporting LGBTQ populations, or the environment. The administration has tried to ensure that we're complying with his administration's priorities by cutting off funding. In fact, on January 27th, the administration issued a memo to pause all federal funding until it could be determined that federal spending was only directed in ways that aligned with the president's policy priorities. This action, like many others, was stopped and challenged in court. So far, 70% of the cases have resulted in rulings in favor of groups challenging executive actions. A recent example, Harvard refused to accept extensive oversight and changes to its governance, admissions, hiring, and other operations. In response, the Trump administration froze federal funding and threatened Harvard's tax-exempt status. This month, a federal judge ruled that the administration illegally froze over $2 billion in federal grants to Harvard and ordered that funding be restored. The judge found the administration's demands were unconstitutional and violated the university's First Amendment rights. But the threats continue. I'm going to share a few examples just from recent months. VOCA funding, which is federal funding that flows to many nonprofits to provide victim services supports. The administration is trying to withhold that funding from states who do not support federal immigration enforcement. So far, 21 state attorneys have filed a lawsuit to try to stop the administration from withholding these funds. Recently, an executive order aimed to end cashless bail would suspend or terminate federal funding in states or local jurisdictions that allow cashless bail. And I think what's important to think about in these actions is that many nonprofits who would be impacted by a freeze in these types of funding don't have anything to do with these decisions that are being made by states or local jurisdictions. And what the administration is trying to do is attempt to freeze funds that provide essential services to make everyone come into compliance with his policy priorities, including funds that have been appropriated by our elected officials who were elected by us to advance our own priorities in our communities. In addition, there have been proposed changes to public service loan forgiveness, a program that forgives the balance on certain student loans for those employed in the public or nonprofit sector to exclude employers involved in illegal activities. The fear here is that the administration is painting DEI efforts, gender-affirming care, providing services without confirming immigration status as illegal activities, with lots of room for ambiguity as what qualifies as illegal. And in July, the president signed H.R. 1, a budget reconciliation bill, which does a lot of things, but notably cuts spending to Medicaid and makes states responsible for costs related to SNAP or food stamps. And ultimately, what this will lead to is the state and county governments needing to provide more of their resources to meet basic needs in our communities, like health care and food access, which means less resources for all the other essential services government funding goes to. We know that philanthropy, whether through foundations or individual donations, cannot fill the hole in funding to nonprofits created by these changes coming from the federal level. To justify its actions, the Trump administration has stated that significant taxpayer dollars have gone to nonprofits engaged in actions that actively undermine the security, prosperity, and safety of the American people. The Chamber has been trying to spread the message that nonprofits do just the opposite. Over many decades, we have become a vital partner to the government. Money from the federal government flows to nonprofits that then invest the money to deliver essential services in our communities. Services like childcare so that parents can work, housing and shelter, increasing educational attainment and job training, access to basic needs, addressing mental health concerns, improving healthcare access, assisting survivors of violence, and so much more. The return on this investment benefits the community as a whole. In this next slide, this is just a small snapshot of the impact federal funding has to our member organizations. These are from survey results when membership was half of what it is now, but we learned that over $112 million in federal funding was supporting over 348,000 community members and over 800 jobs just from our nonprofit members in the early days of the Chamber. The threat of losing federal grants would have had a catastrophic impact on our community and increased the vulnerability of those who rely on life-changing resources provided by nonprofits. But the impact is broader than just federal funding. It's the whiplash of having a grant frozen, unfrozen, restored, regranted. It's receiving notices from federal agencies to change the wording in grant agreements to show that you're not engaged in illegal DEI. It's scrubbing websites and marketing materials for words or phrases that may make your organization targeted for loss of funding or attacked in other ways. Knowing that federal funding into communities could be shrinking and the impact that has to state and county and philanthropic funding makes long-term decision-making for our nonprofits very difficult, if not impossible. And in a moment, we'll have a chance to hear a little bit more from those in the room about how these challenges and uncertainties are really impacting organizations here in our community. Unfortunately, the threats to our nonprofit community do not appear they're going away anytime soon. Over the past week, we've seen how the tragic killing of a right-wing political activist brought new concerns to nonprofits that our sector may be mischaracterized or politicized in ways that undermine our work and our values. This moment reminds us that the nonprofit sector can become a target in volatile political climates. The fear is not just about funding cuts, but about being portrayed as adversarial to national interests, when in fact we are essential partners in building safe, healthy, and thriving communities. But what I found over the last year is that when we get our chamber members together, we enter the room with knowing this environment that we're working in is very challenging. It's depressing, there's a lot of anxiety, there's fear, there's sadness. But ultimately, when we come together, we come back to the fact that the people we serve are too important. We have to work together to meet as many needs as possible. Nonprofits improve lives, build safer neighborhoods, and extend opportunities. And we do that with the support of our donors, volunteers, board members, staff members, and people like you in the room. So in closing, nonprofits are essential. We provide critical services that create opportunities and stand in the gap when too many people are being left behind. But nonprofits cannot do it alone. Community is essential too. The future we want for our neighbors, our families, and ourselves depends on all of us, organizations, leaders, community members working together. It depends on us seeing one another not as separate interests, but as partners with a shared stake in making sure as many members of our community as possible can truly thrive. We can do a lot of this work no matter who is part of the federal government, because when we come together, we are stronger. And when we come together, we build the kind of community that supports each other. Thank you. I look forward to the continued discussion tonight.
Thank you so much, Annette. We are gathering at a really crucial time for our community, and we're so thankful for the work that you do and for the insight that you offered here tonight. It really resonates with Kate and I. We hear so often right now about the challenges that nonprofits are facing across Lakewood with really serious funding concerns and growing community needs. For those of you nonprofit partners in the room tonight, if you haven't already joined the Chamber, HLF has provided support to local nonprofits that would like to join. As you heard Ian say earlier, it's a really invaluable resource for you. Please reach out to Kate or I or Annette if you have any questions about that or how we can get you connected to be a part of the Chamber. Okay, so we are going to move into some discussion around the tables. For those of you here who were here last year, it was a favorite part of the evening. So we really just want this to be a space for learning. No matter what your role is here tonight or what brought you here, we all need to better understand the complexities of delivering human services in our community right now. And we're hoping to brainstorm thoughtful and collaborative approaches for the work ahead. So with learning from Annette, with her insight, and now with moving into these discussions, we hope that you'll really share your real experiences about what you're seeing or what you're hearing and explore how collaboration can help us find better ways to serve and work together. And hopefully, just so you know, HLF really does use feedback from these types of community discussions, and we incorporate that and help use it to guide the work and the way that we respond to community needs. At each of your tables, there should be a board member or a facilitator that's going to help kind of guide through the questions that are or will be on the screen, but they also have a copy of the questions. There are 3 proposed questions, but we're not really trying to prescribe your time, so feel free to use your time as you see fit around the table. And we ask that each of you develop a kind of key insight or question that you would like to report out to the room at the end, and the board member or facilitator will be doing that report out on behalf of your group. All right, enjoy your time together.
How's that going? Sure, so like,
session. So I want to read them and see like just what happens, what resonates.
essentially ended. So, we had.
So that's how it's impacted us. It's been a trying year.
Survive on.
Yeah, and right now.
Stuff all got frozen. It's still not unfrozen because it was part of the.
Because government doesn't want to, but because of the way we fund things, it becomes this void between.
To this subject are we talking about?
No, you changed it.
yeah.
You have a right to be here, but let me pull up a chair and get you the food bank. Healthcare.
So we're going to come back to the full group now, so if everybody could start to wrap up their table conversations.
Yeah.
So to be fair, I'm going to start in the back, if that's all right, and I'm going to come over here to Emmy's table. And I'll ask everyone to listen in as we start at this back table, and they're going to share their key insight or a key question or a key learning from their conversation altogether. Sorry.
I think if I had to distill it to a word, we came up with confusion, that there's an inability to do medium and long range planning with uncertainties of funding, that idea for nonprofits is to diversify funding sources, but everyone's doing it at the same time, causing a glut. And also spike in emergency food and housing needs, but it's all happening at the same time. So being able to rise to meet the challenge is very, very difficult. Okay.
Thank you. Okay, I'm going to head on over here. Jason.
Thank you. So at our table, we did talk through the first question and the third question, and we identified numerous challenges that kind of brought us down as we were talking about them. Things like, the need to build trust and the impact of fear as a challenge, staffing as a challenge, just understanding what services are available within specific populations, certain populations, and how to access those services. And trust came up a few times. We then talked about the third question and thinking about the role that collaboration could play to help outcomes in the community. And one theme that kind of resonated across the table was thinking about a shared services model, a way to reduce administrative back office overhead kinds of costs. Some discussion about the role that AI, emerging technology and AI can play in helping to meet those efficiencies and allowing organizations to focus on service delivery and programming versus the back office kinds of things.
Thank you. I also just want to note that we're asking this question about collaboration, and I know that sometimes funders that ask questions about collaboration, it kind of gets a bad rap and also kind of puts everyone on edge, and I understand. We do not think that collaboration is easy, nor do we think it's necessarily a quick fix for problems. We understand how profoundly challenging it is, especially in the climate that we're in, but we do recognize that we have to band together right now. And so that's why we ask the questions of what are the ways that we can be stronger together. And so that's really the nature of the question. And I just want to clarify that because I know that at times it feels like funders ask for collaboration, but they don't necessarily fund it. And so collaboration takes time, collaboration takes money, collaboration takes trust, and it takes a really strong foundation. We believe that we're developing that here in our community, and that's something I just want to share so that people understand the context of the question. So I'll come over here now to Erin.
Hello. Oh, hello. Okay. So we started with question one, and we did talk about the difficulty to plan and forecast with some of this uncertainty coupled with increasing needs can be very stressful for staff. And then it was also mentioned working with partners who have potentially even an increased uncertainty in funding. So working with schools was mentioned as something that looks a little bit uncertain in the future. That's based on what's going on at the state level, which we didn't even really get into tonight. But as a way to, how do we pivot to make sure we're still able to work with those organizations and serve those organizations? So we have some people thinking through that right now. If an entity like the schools don't have a lot of resources. So we followed the rules for the first question, but then it was discovered that actually the people at this table have a lot in common. So we have a youth leadership organization. We have a conflict mediation center that works with grown-ups, adults, and we have the basketball, say the whole thing again? Basketball mentors, yes. And there's a lot of common thread there, right? So we're talking about mentoring youth, we're talking about developing leadership skills in youth, and we're trying to avoid maybe seeing Danielle's organization when we're grown-ups and trying to, resolve conflicts. And so that conversation really turned into how can we do more things like this opportunity where they all just met each other tonight for the first time. And get together and have that opportunity to problem solve with one another for each other's organizations, develop strategic partnerships and alliances, cost sharing and even like event support was mentioned, and kind of planning and putting on events together versus kind of in this siloed way. And so I thought that was really cool. And I hope they continue their conversation after this. Thanks. Yeah.
Okay. So, hey. Thank you.
Thanks, Kate. So at our table, we really focused a lot of our conversation on the personal relationships that we have with the folks that we're serving and trying to connect with and provide various services. And we talked about how people are living with a lot of stress and uncertainty in all parts of organizations. The people who run the organizations and don't always have the answers because a lot of things are changing quickly. So we talked about how stress and stressful environment is one of the social determinants of health, and how we need to really figure out a way to reduce stress in the community. And then the last thing that we talked about is how we like to interact with funders, and we really focused on the personal connection and the physical presence, being in a physical space instead of a virtual space, that when funders come to the nonprofit and see the work that we do and really experience it for themselves, that makes people who work at those nonprofits feel seen, and it makes us feel like we're really communicating the value of the work that we do. So there's just a lot of us really agreeing that we like these in-person spaces, events like tonight, and just opportunities to really show those who are the donors or the funders directly the work that we're doing.
Yeah, we have a relatively small table. We talked a lot about services to immigrants, because immigrants being kind of on the radar screen at the center of it, at the Hope Center, that provides a lot of wraparound services to the immigrant community. There's been a lot of budget cuts, and organizations they work with, like Catholic Charities, et cetera, and other refugee resettlement organizations have been cut and under a lot of stress. So the impact of that has just been kind of a survival mode would be maybe a good answer, or a focus on very reactive survival mode thinking in the group, as opposed to being able to more strategically plan how to improve services to refugees and grow the organization. So that was our discussion.
So I'm going to come on over here. Roland?
Well, we had a great conversation. We centered our conversation around the question of how are all the organizations going to survive given what's imminent and what's about to happen. And we made the point that, you know, all funders in Ohio, if you add up their corpus, it only amounts to 6% of the federal outlays for the year. Is that okay? So how are you going to get the work done? We talked about two strategies for getting the work done. One is fleshed out, one not so fleshed out. We talked about collaboration. And collaboration, how do you make it effective? How do you make it equal? How do you make it provide incentives for folks to collaborate? And that's still in process, and that's the question for the ages. We spent a little time talking about advocacy, and I thought it was a great conversation. Mike Callahan brought it up, and we jumped on it. We encourage folks not to just think about normal advocacy, but reaching across lines, reaching across racial lines, economic lines, geographic lines, to see if we have interests in common. I put on the table Ashtabula County. How can we work with those folks who are still hurting? They are not unlike many of the folks in this community. So how can we reach across those lines to essentially build a base of support? So that's what we thought about, and
So Warren, I'll have you share.
So we had a pretty concrete example at our table of an organization directly affected by cuts to the federal government and the HUD program and the city of Cleveland, where funding was frozen and delayed, and it affected over 5,000 households. So in that environment, it was difficult for the organization to function, in a secure way. How do you retain staff? Had to deal with layoffs, with all this uncertainty. So, and obviously the folks that were affected by the rent being delayed and the rent assistance, that's a security issue, housing security issue for them as well, a serious one. So I guess that led into question 3, what do we need to do to get back to working together, and why is that so important? Because we felt that the nonprofits fill that important void between the federal government and delivering those services, at the level of the recipient. So it fills an important void, and when there's that uncertainty around funding, it just creates this very difficult environment. The other thing is when there is this lack of security in funding, it creates an environment where it's every man for himself in terms of organization, and it becomes fragmented. We need to get back to a more secure environment where you get a multiplier effect by having the nonprofits work together. So, a lot of important issues, I guess.
Hey everyone. Our table got really real, like up underneath the crust of working together in the plan, and actually we had a lot of expression of fear and uneasiness, and there's, quotes, this is a very exhausted time. We're terrified. This is traumatizing. And I spend my days working as a trauma therapist, and the last thing I would do to a client that came in and said, I'm terrified, I'm traumatized, I'm scared, would be to ask them to make a plan for collaboration, unless it was around their safety. So with that in mind, we kind of had a conversation about where do our emotions live in this conversation, and what do we do, especially as frontline service providers. There's a lot of vicarious trauma, watching people fret about not getting their basic needs met, and you already had that. Nonprofit people go there because you already had that sense of empathy. And so we kind of talked about that. How do we bring emotional intelligence into this conversation, and how do we take care of ourselves? What does mental health first aid look like for providers, for people who are standing out here taking these hits? It is a little easier for me as a practitioner to hide and kind of not pay attention to this, because I'll get paid by insurance companies one way or another, even though I don't recommend working for them. So we were just talking about kind of more of that, like the human piece of it, not so much like the plan or the fix it, but we're really uncomfortable and we're really scared, and maybe we should attend to that before we jump into how to fix it, because there are so many reasons why it's broken that are really interwoven and not just one thread you're going to pull and change it. So it's a call to take care of each other and to get real, talk about our emotions first and then the budgets after. At the end of the day, we're going to make our decisions based on emotions anyway. We're human beings. That's how we work. But yeah, I appreciated that about this table. Everybody just got down to what was not okay. Cool. Thanks, everyone.
I'll just note that this is part of my favorite part about this process is to hearing all of the different perspectives and the way that people orient to the questions. And I want to very much acknowledge what you're talking about here, that it's easy to intellectualize and to talk about kind of what's happening on a policy level and how that's impacting budgets, as you say, but for real lives, for real people, and for real emotions about what it is to do this work every day and to be on the ground. I want to acknowledge how profound it is to be in such a state of uncertainty and to feel targeted and what that is. And so I think it's really important for us to ground ourselves in that, and I want to just note and acknowledge that we take that very seriously. And I think it's important to say out loud, and I'm really grateful that you did. So thank you.
So, here we go. Hi, Liz Maxwell from Gigi's Playhouse. We had an incredible discussion. Tom made a great point, which was mentioned earlier too, about the importance of filling in the gaps with the nonprofits. What are the needs that we have? If there's a need that we have, can there be like a needs place? The resources are incredible, but maybe something that says, what are our needs? HR, finance was mentioned too, and what does that look like? And then kind of bridging into the other topic that we talked about was, I had a great discussion with other nonprofit leaders in the past year, is that there's so many of us that are siloed in what we do. And when we can, exactly, we were in that conversation, we were in that room. How can we partner together? What does that look like? And all it took was 6 weeks where it wasn't all day 6 weeks. It was 6 times where we sat down and got to meet and got to hear more from each person. And what came of that was incredible partnerships from different nonprofits in the area. And it was incredible to see. I have actual stories just from one organization and how they have a co-op for high school students in the Cleveland area, and they do murals. And she's like, it's incredible. We do murals at businesses. And I'm like, wait, we need a mural done in our playhouse at our Achievement Center. And so we started talking, and they came to our Achievement Center. They went through our training. These high school students learned about people with Down syndrome, learned about disability awareness, inclusion, acceptance, got to participate in the programs. They did the mural. It was this most beautiful interaction. And in the past, when we first sat down, I was like, oh, that's cool what you do. I don't know how we could work together. But when we actually got down, which this table, I love what's going on here. I think our participants could absolutely be a part of that because we have volunteers. People with Down syndrome can volunteer, and we want to be included. We had such great discussion on how can we plug and fill in the gaps, and I think those discussions are going to be incredible because there's so many amazing things that all of our nonprofits and just the city of Lakewood in general offers where we can connect those dots, and it's exciting to see, and I think that will help offset maybe the concerns and the fears because we have them too, as what's to come. And I think there's something beautiful that can happen if we just kind of dig deep. I think that was another phrase used, and get to know what can we do for you, what can we do, and have this beautiful connection kind of take place across this incredible city. So thank you.
Thanks, Kate. As you could tell, we had a lot of people to get through, so we didn't finish. But no, I think we really grounded in the acknowledgement, right, that we're in a reality of what happens when nonprofits face the consequences when our government fails our communities. And knowing we're facing a future where need is going to grow and funding is going to go down. It was mentioned we're essentially living through one giant big unfunded mandate right now to still care for our communities without the resources to do it. So yeah, a couple of things we were really grounded in discussing how we can do better at collaborating, at networking. I will say unprompted, I didn't suggest they say this, but it was brought up that Healthy Lakewood Foundation facilitated some really amazing conversations earlier in the year, just inviting fundees to come and talk about what they're going through and how it really was like therapy, and just knowing that they weren't alone, that we're all facing the same challenges. And Lord, we could all use some therapy right now, right? So we'll keep doing that. And in those conversations, as we build those relationships, that community, really talking about it, as was mentioned, like how can we communicate so we're avoiding duplication to, needlessly compete for resources right now because they are so scarce. And also on the funding side, again, didn't prompt this, but it was highlighted. Healthy Lakewood Foundation is one of the few that does this well. But how can we work to make sure funders are not dictating, right, what we do, as opposed to listening to people on the ground and funding what needs to be done?
All right, like several of the other tables have mentioned, we started out with some conversation around really the impact of uncertainty and what it means to have to reorient from what the intended priorities were as funding was put at risk or restricted. And we really acknowledge the reality that organizations that have broader missions or have an ability to maybe be able to buffer a little bit, we're in one kind of circumstance versus those that are much more focused, and especially those who are being targeted and whose missions are at the greatest level of risk. And so one of the, I thought, really compelling points that Ian made at the very end of our conversation was how much there's really this sort of expectation or assumption that's made when we think about Lakewood as a whole and this community as a whole, and people looking at it as a place where needs aren't as high as they might be perceived in other parts of Cleveland geographically, when the very stark reality is there are neighbors, there are community members, there are friends, there are families, there are children who have great need in this community. They may not be as consolidated geographically as they are in other parts of our region, but they are here and they exist and they need our help. And some of the resources that they most need to be put in touch with may not necessarily be here locally within Cleveland or within Lakewood, but they are within Cleveland. So how do we avoid duplicating things that already exist? How do we leverage the resources that are available more regionally? And I think this ties back to the chamber and working with other partners so that we can ensure that we are serving our Lakewood community the best that we possibly can with the resources that not only exist in our own backyard, but that are just across the way.
Okay. And certainly not last but not least.
Hi, I'm Meg Cantrell with Cleveland Rape Crisis Center. Our table talked about a lot. We talked about everything that's going on in the nonprofit sector, how closely knit the human service safety net is in Northeast Ohio, and how detrimental it will be if we continue to see funding cuts. One of the big things we talked about was the prevalence of human trafficking is very high as it is in Ohio. If we don't have connection to stable housing, to food sources, to education, to basic human needs, crime rates are going to go up. We're going to see people more in need of our services when we have less funding to work with. But one thing that I'm happy that our table did, we ended on a positive note, and we talked about the importance of community and really rallying together, because this is how we will get through these times. Back in 2020, MC3, FOMP, and LOBC got through some rough times and some turbulent times because they united together for a common good. And I think that that is the example that we need to take and expand. It starts at the ground level, and we just need to raise it up. We will get through this. It'll be rough, but we'll get through it.
Thank you. Thank you. It's a great note, and we do have lots and lots of examples of banding together in our community all over, and we can refer to those again and again. Becca, I'm going to turn it on over to you for the last comments.
So I just want to again say thank you to everyone for taking the time to connect with those at your table. I think that what I saw here was synergy. I saw connections. I hope that, and I know that you'll take those away. And I really believe that that was in large part inspired by Annette and what you kind of set the stage for us. So again, thank you so much for being here tonight. We know that nonprofits impact all of us, whether they're addressing food insecurity, providing youth activities, serving as a house of worship, or supporting the local neighborhood parks. These organizations help weave the fabric of our community in countless ways. Some of them are obvious, and many others are behind the scenes. There's over 1.3 million nonprofits in our nation, which I think is pretty incredible, especially when we reflect on the fact that most of them are small and they're community-oriented, and they leverage their modest resources to achieve extraordinary things to serve individuals and communities. At Healthy Lakewood Foundation, we're deeply committed to supporting the local nonprofit sector. I think tonight is just a really, compelling example of how we seek to continue to do that, to serve as a convener. We know that it's the staff and the volunteers and ultimately the people that those nonprofits serve who are the experts on the best ways to identify, implement, and sustain lasting solutions that lead to better outcomes. We want to continue to support nonprofits, and that goes well beyond charitable giving. That really means for us an investment in infrastructure that helps communities thrive. And this is achieved through volunteering, through advocacy, through many of the options and ideas that were sparked in conversations tonight, so that we can all help these vital organizations continue their transformative work. We invite you to stay connected with each other, with Healthy Lakewood Foundation. We hope that you will, if you haven't already, subscribe to our newsletter. It's by far the best way to keep in touch and keep up to date about different initiatives that are underway, as well as our grant-making cycle. You can follow us on social media as well. I have one final request before you step out tonight. If you would please take a moment and fill out the survey that's on your table. There's paper copies as well as a QR code, so whatever's most convenient for you. We appreciate that feedback. We really do use it to help us craft these events in the future. And again, I just want to say on behalf of the entire Healthy Lakewood Foundation Board, Sharon and Kate, for all of it, thank you all for being here tonight with us, for sharing your time, and please have a safe drive home and a good night.